Okay, perfect. So we are broadcasting again. Welcome to the second day of our meeting, still here in Kobe, in Japan. And we had an executive session yesterday evening and tomorrow morning. And now we are opening with open session. And we're going to get an update on the Internet Society's action plan for this year, for 2019. So, Andrew, you decide how you want to drive it.
Sure. I guess I can talk, and if people have questions, either I will take them or Renalia will. So, as you might have expected, given the way that, given the time at which I started and the way the plan worked and the things that have happened since and our ideas about planning for the future, we've already uncovered some stuff about the plan for this year that needs adjustment, and so we're making adjustments as we go because it's foolish to continue with a plan that is wrong. So we don't do that. I mean, I know it's nice, like, you know, well, this isn't the tradition of the IETF, for instance. Next slide, please, Kevin. Hey, I ran the working group where that wasn't the plan. So we had an executive retreat a little while ago, and we started, the main goal about that was to look at a longer term picture, you know, sort of get a picture of what it is that we're going to do over the longer term, and also to think about what's going to happen next year. And the planning for next year is, we've got a plan for next year. We're going to talk about that in a later session. The goal, however, is to make sure that we're set up so that next year we can actually do what it is we plan to do. What this means is that we've got things this year that need to be adjusted in order to fit that. Next slide, please. So you remember this this diagram? We have these four areas, and we have the pieces about the way we work. But let's focus on what we're doing first. Next, please. Even I can't see this now. The basic plan that we had is the same. You know, we've still got the same areas. We're still working on you know, improving the technical security through manners, through deploying the infrastructure, the public core, and the remaining CrypTech investment has already happened. NDSS has already happened. We continue to work on connecting. We've got the community network stuff, and we've got the IXPs. We've got the various shaping efforts that we're making in order to try to work on the various emerging issues, and of course we have the IoT campaigns and the OTA and the techno policy and so on. So this is all still the areas where we're focused. Next, please. We had a bunch of discussion in the plan last year about how we work. Next, please. And remember that many of these things have to do with the way that we work in our community. So fundamentally, what we're trying to do is collaborate with other people and build our community. And in order to do that, we have to speak in a sort of consistent and strong way. Next, please. The key thing that we did, and this is primarily Renalia and her group, have been working really hard to try to deliver progress indicators that link up what the activity is with some kind of outcome, and that effort took a fair amount of time. I think that it took longer than some of the staff believed it was going to take, and what we saw was that it focused people around precisely what it was that they were doing. And what this means is that we have some areas where it became obvious to us that things didn't have really clear indicators, and it had other cases where it was really clear that people knew exactly what they were doing. And that has been the basis on which we've been making a number of decisions. So we're obviously going to you know, present the reporting tool that is going to come along with this. And the reporting tool will not only, it will be the basis by which we're going to do these things in the future. So you'll be able to see as we go what the outcomes are, what the measures are showing. We are going to talk this July about the indicators that we need for this year. So you remember that when we presented this last November, there were a number of commitments that are in the action plan about things that are going to be measures that you can see. And those are all measures that we're going to have to deliver to you. But this July, we're also going to present a number of other indicators so that you've got some clue about, how well are we doing? Are we actually getting where we said we were going to get, and so on. Finally, of course, we're gonna try to put together. Well, we're not just gonna try. We're gonna succeed in putting together, an impact report that we'll publish at the beginning of next year. But we'll have a little bit of data before then, of course. Next, please. So, as I said, we made some adjustments. Fundamentally, and I think that this is not news. I felt that we had a little bit of a scattered focus, that there were too many things that were going on, and they were not all consistently targeted at a common set of goals. And so what we're trying to do is narrow that. And over the course of this year, some things we're going to find that we're narrowing some things. So we've just got 3 projects that we have completely ended. One of those, of course, we already talked about, the Strickling project. Yeah, the multi-stakeholder project. There it is. I knew I would get the word out. We've also got some other activities, some subsidiary activities inside some various projects that we terminated. We've also got a bunch of things where we're making some adjustments to these programs. The key thing here is, bless you. The key thing here is to try to set things up so that next year's programs can follow from this. Next, please. Back. All right. So one of the things that's happening here is that there are some staff changes that are happening. People's work is being affected, and that means that this is an open session, so I'm not going to talk about the details. But this information has been shared internally. There are some reallocations of budgets that are happening as a result of this, and we have some things that Sandy has requested from the that you've all approved, and about some of those reallocations. We've also found that the Emerging Opportunities Fund, which was always supposed to be the place from which we drew, because we knew that we had a bunch of projects that were going to compete for resources. We knew that there were going to be some effects there. So we're already starting to see that we've got some drawdown from the Emerging Opportunities Fund. So there is a little bit of effect from that, and as time goes on, we will report back on the ways in which that stuff is allocated. Next, please. All right, so now there is this 2020 process, and I'm going to ask Renalia to talk about this because I'm too far away from the screen and I'll get the details wrong. Renalia.
Thanks, Andrew. When I came on board at the Internet Society, the feedback that I got was the planning process for 2019 was quite challenging for staff. And so we are trying to address that by being prepared for the 2020 planning, and we're starting the planning early. So it started with the executive team meeting in February, where we identified the strategic priorities for 2020 itself. And that is going to frame the action plan that's going to be approved by the board in November. And what is important to note about this process for 2020 is that it has 2 touch points with community for consultations. The first one is going to be in March, And essentially, we are going to get feedback from community and board and staff regarding the strategic priorities that we have identified. There's a 4-week period for gathering this input, and then that input will be channeled to staff to basically inform their project development process. So staff goes about developing their projects, and then they send it to the executive team, and then the executive team will essentially identify the projects that are green lighted. They are okay to proceed or not okay. And then they go off to basically develop the more detailed budget and also to fill in the blanks for implementation. And that again goes to consultation with community. That's the second point. And this process has the budget process integrated in so that they have the necessary financial information to develop the budget well. And then the executive team will look at the consolidated information as well as the consolidated budget. The budget will go to the board finance committee for approval, and then the action plan document will be created, and that is the final product that will be presented to the board for approval in November. So as you can see, the process spans almost the entire year. It gives time for staff to actually spend time thinking and developing. And it is a requirement that they do it in an interdisciplinary way so that it's not siloed in each department. And there are some criteria that's going to be embedded. And I had heard reference from the board yesterday about KPIs, and earlier Andrew mentioned the impact indicators that we are formulating, so that is also embedded in the process itself. So I'm hoping that this is an improvement, and it will lead to a higher quality action plan and projects for the Internet Society across the board that has community shared ownership and also involvement in the delivery. Thank you.
You can go to the next. As I think Renalia just said, there are a couple of things that are important about this. There is this fact that we're always we're sensitive to this complaint that we've heard more than once, that the Internet Society just like goes off and disappears and then comes back. And the first problem with that, of course, is that when people say the Internet Society there, they mean only the staff. And so part of the point is to make sure that we stop that. And one of the ways that we do that is we say, oh, staff and the community actually need to work together on these things. So that's part of the reason that there are those consultation points in there. The other thing is that by developing this kind of thing in the open, instead of it being like a sort of mysterious activity where the staff are showing up and doing things, what you have instead is the whole society working together on the priorities of the organization. Now, obviously, we need some agility here because there are going to be things that just come up and you've got to be able to respond to them. Nobody's trying to make a plan that is set completely in concrete that can't be moved. But the idea is instead that we produce basically a framework in which we decide, okay, is this a thing that we're going to work on or not? I think that there's an argument to be made that the Internet Society didn't always have a good filter in choosing, okay, is this one of our topics? And part of the goal here is really to have a very clear filter when something comes along and somebody says, gee, that's interesting, and it touches the internet. Since practically everything touches the internet now, we can't do that. I've heard you talk about not being the everything society. This is the way by which we not be the everything society. So that's really what the goal here is. And then, at the end of this, what we should have is a plan that everybody feels they're part of. And by everybody, I mean not everyone in the world, but everyone who wants to be part of the Internet Society, so that everybody understands these are the things that we're working on and we're working on them together. So that's pretty much all I have to say, and all we have to say on the top line stuff. There are a couple of backup things in here if we really need them, but I think probably it's better to open the floor.
Yeah. Thanks for the presentation. And I think, starting early and trying to involve people, get ownership, I think it all sounds really good. So yeah, I think the direction is really great. Do we have any? Yes, Harish, and then Desiree, and then Walid.
All right, thank you, Andrew and Renalia. It's good stuff to start off with. I'm curious as to how you want to, looking at your chart, that workflow, the budget process 2020. You did say that you use the phrases, they go back and go and figure out and come back and go through that cycle. And then the next slide uses the magic words, agile process. I'm not sure how you can have agile process when you have people going off somewhere and doing something and then coming back. it has to be a very quick, tight iteration process. I mean, I'm actually sold on the whole idea of agile model. And I like the fact that you do say that you want to engage with more people to have input. So how quickly and how transparently is it done in real time? In the sense like how an agile process, like a Scrum or something like that, actually works. So trying to translate that may be tricky for some individuals because they have never done it. But I think that's really my question. Thanks.
First of all, you'll notice that the agile on that slide is not capitalized, and that's an important thing, right? We're not using agile TM, although I like that sort of thing, and I like the iterative process and all the rest of it. The iteration that's in here is part of that goal, but you know, we couldn't run short sprints and still do it in the community, because if you give our community less than 4 weeks to respond to anything, they say that it's a useless timeline. So you need to give, you know, 4 weeks for a lot of these kinds of things. And you can see on here, there actually are dates. You probably can't see them on there, but if you look at the thing, there actually are dates. So for instance, the step 10 there, the consultation with the community, that runs for roughly 4 weeks in July and August. Of course, we're going to do these things in public, right? What do? You put the questions out. People discuss them in public forums. People discuss them by sending feedback to lists or whatever. Also, you know, we'll use the tools that we have, like Member Nova, in order to allow this kind of thing. I don't know how else to do that. We don't have any choice but to run these things as though they're open calls. Internally, the staff development of projects, for instance, these proposals, we expect staff to do that on the internal open staff tools. That's what we're going to use. And the reason we're going to do that is because what I don't want is a list coming to the executive team of every pet project everybody ever had. Instead, what people have to do is work together to produce a package that produces a common thing across the staff. So I don't want, you know, I don't want the 3 things, like from a region and also from the, you know, the Internet Technology Office and also from Pub Policy talking about cryptography. That's dumb. We shouldn't have that problem internally. We're only 100 people. So instead, what we can do is we can work using the tools that we have collaboratively, internally as well as externally, in order to put these things together. So I take your criticism about, you know, usual agile things. I think 2-week sprints are just fine, but we can't do that in this way. So we've got to extend those things, and we're going to use the kind of openness of the internet style of operation in order to try to get some of that agility. When you're building these projects, for instance, instead of having the agility of like 2 weeks and you got a deadline and now you got to do your postmortem, you can instead say, all right, well, we got 4 weeks to do this, but we're going to refine, you know, once a week, we're going to have this checkpoint and we can refine this thing so that the final thing, when it comes out of the other end of that process, can in fact have multiple iterations within it.
Thank you. Des.
Yes, thank you very much for the presentation. I think this is really music to my ears, and glad you're trying it out. I think it's really great to get this reiterative process and community involvement at the early stages. So congrats on doing that, and I hope it will show some results, and it's worth trying. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Wally?
Yeah, oops. Along those lines, music also to my ears, and very operationalized and practical, pragmatic steps. I really love to see the results down the line. One thing I'd like to emphasize is perhaps is not being afraid of canceling something that doesn't work. I think that's been somewhat of a taboo topic to talk. I mean, we have to carry the baggage along. So maybe that's one thing I'd like to see if you find value in recognizing this and making staff more open and transparent in this. Now, the other thing is, you recall, I think it was you who said the question around our existential threat is whether ISOC actually has value to its members, whether if we disappear one day, someone will care. So how do you find this, engrave this mindset into the staff and let them know that they're ultimate guideline towards whatever they do is not a daily job, but it's making ISOC useful to the public.
Well, so that is the goal. I mean, just on the topic of canceling things, you know, we did in fact cancel a number of things here. We've got, you know, 3 whole projects that are in the 2019 plan that we have killed. And this isn't because we don't think that, you know, we just don't think that they were adding to our focus and to our ability to do these things. That doesn't mean that these are useless things to do. It doesn't mean that nobody should do them. But what it means is if the internet society is going to have an effect in the world, then we have to pick and choose. And some of those things we had to choose. So, you know, we decided that there were some things that we didn't understand how we were going to achieve them. We didn't understand how they were going to make a difference to the world, and so we've ended them. Yeah, I mean, to pick an example, there was an item in the action plan for this year around emerging access that was involving schools and so on, and we were trying to figure out how that was going to make the effect that we wanted, and we came to the conclusion that we just couldn't, so we've ended it. And you know, there was $100,000 budgeted for that, and we're not going to spend it now. And that's something that we have to do. It's my job. It's what you hired me to do. So that's fundamentally one of the things that we have to do, is say, this is not a valuable thing for us to do given what we want to achieve. And that's really what the filter is going to be. And the second thing was, you know, okay, well, you know, if the Internet Society disappeared, would anybody notice? Well, the idea, of course, is that we've got this project that says, here are the ones that we're going to do, and here are the things the community has said, oh yeah, we want you to do that one. So I'm hoping that the result of that is that if you stop doing it, people would say, hey, wait a minute, we wanted this thing to be done. The idea here is, in fact, that we, you know, only work on stuff that people are actually excited about. If we propose a bunch of things and the community comes back and says, nah, this is all stupid, then, you know, we would be morons not to take that on board. That's a really, really important piece of feedback. And, you know, yes, I completely agree. We need to be producing the things that our community wants from us.
Yeah, thank you, Glenn. I mean, you guys give me a hard time every single meeting about that. I know, because I even told Hans-Peter to move one seat, and Desiree moved. Come on. Glenn, please, the floor is yours.
Thank you. And you know, every time you speak about this stuff, Andrew, I'm more and more impressed. You cannot make an omelet without breaking some eggs. You had to be decisive, and you're showing leadership, and I'm impressed. After saying that, democracy is an ugly thing. You remember what Churchill said, right? And I agree with, and this is refreshing to hear, because I don't think there's been a culture in ISOC of listening to the groundswell. And Hans and I were talking earlier today about the advisory council. Maybe this sort of thing will give it some meaning, because it seems to be just somewhere doing something. And maybe they'll attend the meetings, right, Hans? And have quorum. Radical. Yeah, so I think, yeah, we have to listen to the base, and they're not always right, right? And everybody's got their pet projects, and I think you're doing the right thing, listening to the base, finding out what their interest is, and marching this organization towards definitive goals. And I've always liked the idea of success indicators, showing where we've been, where we're going, and having the balls. Well, I can't say that. I was told to watch my language. Right? Okay. Having what's another term for balls, Sean? Yeah, come on.
It's a different language.
Is that what it is? Oh, well, tell my wife not to kick me in the fortitudes, right? Okay. Yeah, you know what? That's good. Thank you.
You cannot say that.
So if I can just.
Yeah. So Andrew, and then.
So very quickly on this thing about, you know, democracy being ugly and so on. I get that, and I want to be clear that ultimately the job falls to me to make some of these decisions. That this isn't like we're not going to vote on it. Staff don't get to vote. It's important to have a lot of feedback, and I like a lot of feedback, but ultimately you are paying me to make a decision, and I have to make it, and I got to wear it. And I'm perfectly prepared to do that. That's an important part of this. That ultimately I have to be responsible. I have to be responsible to you, and through you to our wider community, because I'm assuming that as the board, you are listening to the various people around you.
Pepper.
I just want to say thank you. I mean, the discipline that you've gone through with the process, I think, and actually we now have sort of a disciplined roadmap, I think is actually what's needed. And the way you're executing on it, I think is great. And the fact that you've done one of the most difficult things, which is when do you stop doing something, right? And you actually say, no, that's really hard. So again, it's just an indication of the discipline. And I frankly, thank you.
So thank you, but I the credit doesn't accrue to me, right? This is actually the entire Internet Society staff has dug in for this.
In it,
Yeah,
as well,
and
as surrogates for the entire staff.
But I guess I want to make that on the record that I recognize this has been very, very painful for a lot of staff. This is a lot of unscheduled work that was quite detailed planning that in principle should have been done as part of the development last year, and it didn't get done. And so we've had to do a lot of that work this year, plus we have a lot of work to come. But I believe in the staff. I believe that people are ready and hungry for this. So I think that's going to be good. So thanks to all of them, and thanks to Renalia and her team who did an A+ job on this.
Good. Yeah, one thing we haven't talked about in the questions, but it's something that we've been doing like for the last years and trying to get closer and closer is the orientation to impact as opposed to just having actions for the sake of actions. So I think that's really good, actually. I mean, how we measure that and thinking in terms of, what we want to accomplish as opposed to just, hey, let's do that. So, yeah, I mean, looking forward to seeing how this works and how basically we usually approve the action plan in November. So we are, we have plenty of time actually to try this and try to get to some point that makes sense, and we can basically then commit to that for the next year. Any further questions on this side of the room? Now somebody on the left, any question? Okay, Walid, you may.
A quick reference to the community. You said we listen to the community, and when they say something, I mean, of course, that's a good thing, but it should not be exclusively so, since we are a mission-based organization. And I mean, and some members might want to take us in one direction, but it's a proposal without perhaps understanding of the full context. Their context is okay, but we are dealing with a global picture here. So, yeah, keep that in mind.
Thank you, Walid. Okay, excellent. So now we're going to move to point 11 in the agenda, which is in closed session. And then we will have right away right after that, the lunch break. So we're going to be resuming in open session at 1 o'clock local time.
Yes.
Which is in 1.5 hours.
Yes, and that's a hard start because we have a guest presenter for that.
Yes, we will be 1 sharp. So we are actually having, the first time that we meet actually Eduardo, and I think we are very fortunate that he was around and we can meet, face to face. Sometimes, we get these reports by video conference, but this time I think it's great that, we can basically, meet in person. And I mean, and it's actually indeed the first time we meet face to face as well. That was great, actually. So we're going to get, as usual, the report from the Chapters Advisory Council. So Eduardo, the floor is yours.
Thank you, everyone, and thank you for allowing me this time to present about the Advisory Council Steering Committee. I just became chair of this year on this advisory committee, even though I participated about 2 years ago when Abridoria was there. And I just wanted to report on the last advice that was got hanging there, and just give a report about how we're going to move forward with that, and also, to present the group. And the idea is, so me, because some of you, I know most of you, but I don't know some of you either, because we come from different places. So if we can start, who is okay?
I think Kevin will drive the slides, and so you tell Kevin when to
So
switch.
say Kevin, please. Okay. So really, this is going to be a brief presentation, and I just want to introduce the team members for some of you that don't know us. I invited to this meeting all the sitting committees members that are here in Kobe, and happens that Oliver is here. There's another person called Peter Koch from the CCNSO, which is, invited, them, but they might be busy. In any case, second item I want to bring in is the change, the advice that we sent last year, and where we are on that, and how we're going to move forward, looking ahead. So next, please. This is the we are 9 members in the steering committee, and there are 6 of them that are selected from different chapters in different regions, and 3 known geographical members are selected by the number of votes that you get. And basically, I'm a non-geographical member. Before I was selected from my region, but in any case, I think you have seen this before, so I don't have to go over it. So, but I want you to know who am I, because I'm thinking in the future we will be interacting often. Okay, go to the next slide, please. So the current advice that it's there, and I watched the video where was this discussed. There was in the proposed. The advice has to do with changes to the charter to the advisory council. And there was one item specifically that brought the attention of the board. I believe it didn't pass. I mean, there was some concerns about this, and this has to do with the fact that we wanted to increase the number of people that are delegated into the advisory council, since there are many chapters, about more than 50% of the chapters, that have not assigned delegates to the advisory council for one reason or another. And so the previous advisory council said, wanted to make a change in the charter where it says, by default, if you don't get a chapter designating a delegate, then the president automatically gets elected. And I agree. And the rationale was, what you see there, that after 3 years of operation, it was appropriate to do this change and making sure that we have the delegates there to increase participation.
Yeah, Eduardo, I mean, just as a formal thing, it's not that it didn't pass. So, I mean, we never had a resolution to do that. It was like SIBA presented it,
yes,
and he was very clear saying that it was for our information, So in that sense, it's not like we tried to pass a resolution and fail. It was more like a dialogue between, and that's exactly the feedback we sent. So yeah, it wasn't like a formal rejection or anything. It was more as part of the dialogue.
Yes. Okay. Well, anyhow, we took that back. That comment, we'll say, was a comment, it's not a formal rejection. So we took that comment back and we discussed it. And we think there are other ways of doing this. Personally, and we all agree that having a default is not really a way of motivating people to participate, period. So just for the record, this was received by the board on October, and there was a presentation made on this by SIBA, I believe, in November. So right about that time, we have the elections, and then we have a new advisory board put together. So I don't know, the next slide is, well, so this is not correct. It's not that I'm not going to approve, it got commented. And this is the part of the charter that was, got some comments from the board. So, and again, the rationale behind this is to have more people engaged, which really this is not going to do it, period. So the next slide, please. Moving forward, what we plan to do is to resubmit this advice without that change. And we're going to, the direction that we're going to take that I'm going to think it will work better is, since we have the new evaluation criteria that the chapters are going to go through now, which is one that will be a mandatory criteria and the other one is more motivational. So we want to add in the motivational part, since having a delegate in the advisory committee is not something that is put in the MOU that we sign. It's more a motivational one. We want to add 2 more items to this motivational list to make sure chapters designate a board, a delegate to the advisory committee, and that they participate. And if they want to move through this level of criteria, which I think is something that they can meet very easily, because you participate and you also designate a delegate, it will work better. And also there was a question about active participation. And I think I haven't discussed this more closely with the team members, but I think part of the problem with the participation of the delegates in the meetings is the fact that these meetings happen only 1 or 2 a year. Maybe we need to increase the frequency so people get, to work in there, because having a couple of these meetings a year, I don't think it will be a way of making people aware of these meetings or being active. So that's the direction we're going to take. So we're not dropping this thing, but we are making sure that we do it a different way, which I think will be more effective.
Yeah. So basically, the approach of measuring this as part of other measurements that we are already doing, I think that sounds really good, because as you said, then when we are assessing the health of a chapter, this is something that we will look at, so you have the incentives to do that. Just to clarify our comment about the default being the president, that wasn't really the problem. The problem was having someone appointed without that person even acknowledging, yes, I can do it. So if it had been like a heartbeat, like sending an email, hey, do you want to be the representative? And this person would say yes, that's completely okay. But the way it was written was kind of like, we cannot get even an email back from this person, so we will just make him the official representative. So that was kind of the what caused somehow heartburn.
Okay.
But so if you want to go down this road and maybe you want to add to the whatever you want to add it, that by default you will reach out to the president of the chapter, that's completely okay.
Mm-hmm.
But there needs to be an action by the person that is appointed that says at least, hey, I accept this. So that was kind of the problem. So if you want to keep something like by default we will reach out to the president, that's completely okay.
Yeah, but I still think there are always, because this is more if a chapter doesn't do it, then what? If they don't participate, then what?
Yeah.
There has to be something that will motivate them to do this, and I think this other direction will do that.
Yeah. So if you do both, because you have to make sure. I think that was Olga's point, that sometimes they didn't even know that this existed. So you need a mechanism to reach out and say, Mr. Chapter, this is the advisory council, and this is how you could participate. And then if they don't want to do it, as you said, you need incentives and everything, but at least to make sure that they are aware of that. So that was basically, if summarizing the discussions we had at that point.
Thank you for the clarification.
Yeah. And Desiree wanted to say something. Yeah.
So what kind of tools do you use to communicate with chapters, or you plan to do it when you thought of adding it in automatically? Were you counting on staff to add them automatically, or the advisory council?
Do you mean automatically, like the way we set?
I meant now with the accept. So I wonder if you have a separate mailing list.
We do have a mailing list to communicate with delegates. Doesn't mean
current ones, but the ones who are not on the list.
They are not. They don't receive an email, right?
Yes, but
so this is what we're thinking. We go through this evaluation criteria that it happens twice. It's going to happen twice this year. the regional contact will talk to the chapter, because I believe the regional, I don't remember how they call it, the
You mean regional bureaus?
bureaus, yes.
Okay.
They will contact each chapter to evaluate them, right? And if now this new evaluation is going to include have you designated a delegate to the AC? And if the chapter doesn't know what the AC, the regional bureau should explain that.
Thank you for clarifying that. So you are relying on staff to do this?
Yes.
I mean, there's two things, right? I mean, like the assessment is done by staff all the time, right? I mean, there's no change there. The only thing is like you will have another, measurement that you do, which is like, hey, have you appointed someone to the AC? So it's just another question in the assessment they already performed. So just to be crystal clear.
Right.
Yeah. Have you, by the way, discussed this idea? Because I personally think it's great, but have you discussed with the regional bureaus or with someone from staff yet?
We have a Christy. I have a
Christine. Yeah.
Christine, she's very good. So yes, we have been discussing this.
Perfect.
There's a group that defines these criteria, and we're passing this there, and then we're reaching consensus of this, and after that, then you have to look how we can incorporate this into the new Member Nova system.
Yeah.
But the idea is that it will be there, and when this discussion on evaluation happens, there will be. Have you designated an advisory committee delegate?
Yes.
And if you don't know what that is, then that's the point. That's where you explain it. And then if you had, is this person participating? They will know that, you have participated only once in 4 meetings or something like that. What's going on? But it's, again, that's a motivational one. That's also criteria. If you don't do them, but then you don't get points. It's like a frequent flyer, It's a frequent flyer.
I think that the input from the board, unless I hear something else, is like, this is a great idea. Thanks for, the proactivity and clear thinking. And please go ahead. I guess, yeah. Yeah. So this is, thanks.
Okay, well, and I expect to talk to you or other members informally before we send the advice, just to make sure we are clear.
Yeah,
as to...
this is something that I was stressing because, in the past sometimes, not with you guys only, but with more people, it's been kind of very transactional, like very official. And I think sometimes having more an informal, way of talking, sometimes it's useful because sometimes you see something that needs to be fixed or you go like, hey, have you thought about that? I've been sometimes participating in the mailing list in that I've been told to join, just to also be open to the community, so that it's not like Eduardo and I talking in a dark room that nobody has access to. So I think we can do anything that works for you.
No, I think the better communication, the better it will be for everyone.
Absolutely.
So. Looking ahead, we have a pilot going on the IATF on the previous advice that maybe Olivier might want to add something to that. And in the past 2 months, we have looked at the topics that are being discussed in the advisory chapter, and we have looked at them, looking at from our remit, which is providing advice somehow. And we found there are some discussion topics there that there were issues with chapters, but really it's not the focus of the advisory council. So we have been able to clean them up and concise some of them, so we can work more efficiently and more clear as to which direction we need to take, because really we should bring to the some kind of advice to the board that really encompass most of the chapters, not one chapter. And that's very important. So we're doing that. And
that was just to build on that, that was clearly when we created we as the community, not as the board, the advisory chapters, both the OMAC, so for organizations, and you guys. That was exactly the thing, because for us it was very difficult to know if something was kind of affecting a chapter or it was, hey, this affects like all the chapters. So in that sense, having that type of assessment made by you guys, it's actually helping us prioritize our time, because then we can fix the really important issues. So that was kind of in the past we have been talking about, about this in terms of metadata, like when we get a request, something about the request, like, hey, this is a request of a random guy that thinks this is like the way things go, or this is a request that is basically backed by the whole community. So this type of information would be great to have.
Yep. So
and Sean wants to.
Okay. This is actually done in other parts of the community. So for example, when an internet draft is progressing through the status, when it gets to the ISG, the person who's the shepherd for that document writes up something that says basically just that. A couple of people liked it, a couple of really active people, but one person really hated it, just to kind of get a sense and a flavor of like, hey, this is unanimous, like everybody loved this, is like knock it out of the park. It kind of helps us figure out, how to prioritize essentially whether or not it's really super important, because you guys do have a role of providing information up. You don't want to filter it. I think I used that word one time before, and Glenn corrected me. But it is good for us to know the flavor of like how much weight to give it essentially.
One thing that I'm planning to give an approach to this is that, if you bring a issue to the advisory committee, I will say, what is the expected advice? Give me a flavor for what it is, and that will put you in the framework of what we're doing. And about the two-way collaboration, we are here to send advice to the board. But again, if you need something, you need to know something, and some kind of recommendation that you need from the board to the chapters, please, we are the channel. We can take it and go back to the chapters and come back with an answer or recommendation or whatever you need to know.
And we were discussing this precise point because I had we had a phone conversation at some point in the executive session this morning that the reason why we are so excited with kind of this kind of new infusion of energy that you are trying to do there is that it's really important for us sometimes to consult the community to understand issues, and having a functioning advisory council for both communities, orgs, and chapters would be so useful for us. So absolutely, this is the model that we would like to follow.
Well, that's what's there.
Yeah.
Goes both ways.
Yeah.
So that's all I have to say. I don't know, Oliver, if you want to add anything. No? Okay. Well, I want to thank you for.
Of course, I can never say I have nothing else to add. I have one question.
Glenn
Are there any questions from any board of trustees?
Glenn had a question.
Okay, well, I'm done. If you have a question,
Glenn.
okay.
Sorry, what's your name again?
I don't know.
I was looking at the minutes of last year's, and I saw so many of the meetings didn't make quorum. Are you going to change your bylaws on this, or are you going to, really get your members now really motivated that they actually attend every meeting?
Glenn, are you talking about the steering committee? Well, one of the things I'm planning to do, I'm starting doing, is I'm going to assign topics of discussions to each member. So you have to be there to discuss that topic, because before it was all the chair or the vice chair, and everybody else was like in a listening mode. So there was not really a motivation to go there and do it. But now I say, but you do this discussion, if you bring this discussion, and if you bring an issue, hey, it's your topic of discussion. So it's your responsibility to move it forward or what have you. Because that way, everybody, all of us are responsible. And if you get something that get assigned, I'm pretty sure you will try to be there. Before, if you're in an observer mode, who cares? That's my own perception. So, and it's working out. We got a full quorum in the last meeting.
Excellent.
And I expect to have that going forward.
Yeah. No, accountability is good. So yeah, Olivier.
Yeah, thanks, Gonzalo. If I could just add one thing. Our quorum for the steering committee is 7 out of 9. And as you know, most of the people in the steering committee are very busy, so they're traveling and so on. So we've had that problem of at least 2 people that are traveling, and then we're like, okay, we're one person short, and so we've had to each time say, okay, we'll move it to the mailing list, etc., etc. So we are thinking of dropping it by one person, so then we get the normal at least 50% of the steering committee are there. 7 out of 9 is very hard to.
Yeah. And I know
sort
that
of-
was proposed at some point, and we never finished the discussion. But I mean, it sounds reasonable that you have a quorum that it's realistic and you know. So yeah, I mean, we can talk about that and change the rule. Glenn, or yeah, Glenn and then Olivier.
In terms of the PIR advisory, they meet once a year. There's a budget allocated for their travel to meet together, to work together. Is there any provisions for any kind of financial support for your members to do any kind of annual meeting?
As far as I know, I don't think we have any budget assigned to us, and you know, most of the work that we do, I think we can do by phone. It's not, you know, like we need to get face to face yet.
No, that was a great response, actually. No, seriously, it's just like I like what you need to accomplish, and you will use the tools, and if at some point you cannot, I mean, use different tools, but yeah. So I appreciate that way of thinking. More questions? Okay, just double checking. Yeah, Olivier.
Yeah, thanks, Gonzalo. I was going to answer with a different answer and say, well, we got about 100 members, so 100 people twice a year,
Exactly.
in a nice location, Hawaii, Vegas, this sort of place. Maybe not. No. I was going to just add regarding the chapter advisory council. Well, the chapters that do not have someone delegated to the advisory council. We're talking about a very small number of chapters. I think it's something like 10, 15 chapters out of the 100 plus chapters that are around the world. So it's really, and when you look at the list, some of them are dead ducks. I mean, sorry to say, but I've never seen any kind of life in some of these chapters. I think even some of them might be about to go into rejuvenation as well. So that's a problem I think that will solve itself as well, completely. Regarding the participation in the conference calls of the overall chapter advisory council, we have a quorum that is quite low on this. I think we have a quorum, is it 17 or 20? 19? 19 out of the 100 and something. That makes the quorum. But we're not playing with that. I think it's important to have at least 50%, if not more than that. And that's what Eduardo is really pushing for. And this is why I think that the idea of having the performance of chapters also related to this is really important, because it does give the incentive. And we're not here to actually tell people off, but we're really here to get a more vibrant community together.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's really important. And so if you have other ways and other suggestions, by the way, for this, we would be very, very happy if you could, make suggestions on that as well. Thank you.
Excellent. Yeah, no, I mean, we will work together and see as we go. So absolutely. Any other question for, yes, Olga.
Thank you, Eduardo and Olivier. And thank you for coming. What's the name of role of Nancy, which is in charge of the communications with chapters? I don't recall. She has done a very, very good job in setting up for the chapters in Latin America. I don't know if you're in that list or in the other one. I never know if you're north or south. You speak Spanish, so for me you're Latino, and then you're in the north. She has done a WhatsApp. It's so simple, but it's so dynamic. So all the information goes there, the calls, every important information about what to attend, webinars, conferences. It's very, very, very useful. So maybe you can think about a tool like that. And it was spontaneous from her, and it has been replicated in other regions.
Yeah, Nancy has done a great job in Latin America. One of the things, other than the WhatsApp too, which is very good, sometimes get very busy, with this, thank you, bye, But in any case, it's a good channel to have. And also, one thing that she does, I don't know how they do it in different, is that she gets to talk to each chapter one-to-one. They don't wait like for the evaluation time to talk one-to-one, that she keeps the connection there all the time. And I think that makes a big difference. Very big difference. In fact, she was very proud that at the last call, she got a 100% chapter assist. I said, well, you know, say, good for you.
The chapter folks. One thing I was thinking in terms of motivation, building on their competences, their profiles. For example, whether this chapter is very good at a particular area, such as IT or technology or community networks, depending on, and then point that through, you probably have access to the database that ISOC has, and you can tell which ones are interested. So you can actually say, we'd like to invite you to give a speech or something, or present an idea, so that you let them know that they are contributors, not simply calling in to just join. I mean, that's something that came to mind, because we get that all locally as well. With, you know, you take the micro picture and then micro pictures that within a community, you actually have the same problem. They don't come, they don't appear, unless you contributed, you have this idea. So maybe that's one way in which you can encourage them, right?
Are you talking to me or Nancy? Yeah, I understand what you're saying. Yes. But that for what I've seen and I know about Nancy, is that style that she has, a one-to-one thing. It really makes a big difference, because it shows you, you know, that you care about your chapter and you want to help, and people react to that.
Please.
Thanks, Gonzalo. It's interesting, actually. The competencies of chapters is really important. As you said, some are really focused on something, or they have people within their ranks, within the chapter, that are very strong on specific issues. I'm not sure to what length we actually have access to such information due to data protection issues. So I'm not quite sure whether, for example, having the list of members of a SIG, if you know the IoT SIG, for example, then you'd find out, well, which chapters are really involved in the IoT SIG. That would be super helpful, because then we'd be able to actually address those, you know, more specifically, or when there is something or any comments required on specific topics, then we'd know who to really focus on, rather than sending a general notice that ends up in the spam box of a lot of people. So.
Excellent. Yeah, seeing no more questions, but I mean, thanks a lot. And as I said, I mean, you know, the proposals you made, they sound really good. And anything else, you know, we can have periodic calls, like every 2 months, every 3 months, every week when needed. So, I mean, you know how to reach me, and we'll take it from there. But yeah, I mean, don't hesitate to just reach out when needed.
I want to thank the board for giving me this time to present this, and thank you so much. Have a good meeting.
Yeah, absolutely. Perfect. Thanks. So after this, we have any other business? So I don't see any request. Oh, sorry. Okay. So that would be, yeah, that would be the last item on the agenda before we basically have the foundation board meeting. So yeah.
Sorry, I've sent an email yesterday to the board to approve the charter revisions. The 3 charter revisions.
But we already passed the resolution.
We did, but okay.
Yeah.
So
you capture it, John.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
It was last time yesterday. And just make sure that I'm not dreaming things.
It was item 13.
Yeah,
Julie. It was the last.
But Gonzalo caught it. Yeah, we done it.
Yeah, we did it.
So my recollection was correct.
Yeah, it was right after the presentation from Mr. Fujisaki.
Yes. Okay, excellent. So yeah, but thanks for double checking, because yeah, this is the type of thing we want to make sure we do. Okay, so just before we close, and for the remote participants that they may want to join the foundation board meeting, we will start in half an hour. Is that correct, Kevin? In 25 minutes?
That's correct.
Okay, good. So, well, yeah, I don't see any other business, so I move to adjourn. Okay, the meeting is closed. Thank you.